Oh, it's got the wrong camera. Okay. I was trying to figure out what camera I'm on. But anyway, this is Cassandra Williamson, and I got my hair all fuzzy again. Oh my gosh, come on. So anyway, yeah, Executive Director for Transgender Diverse Veterans of America Action Group, our TDVA Action Group. And a lot of what we talk about here will be advocacy and activism kind of stuff. So I want to make it very clear about that. We have a disclaimer that I need to put up here. Hold on a second. Here it comes. So across the bottom there, that's how you can reach me. That's the email address, our phone number, all that kind of stuff. Just reach in and talk with us. Reach out here and then, say something, say hi. Love to have you. So anyway, not much has changed since yesterday. Things are still going on in the House of Representatives with Jim Jordan trying to become the Speaker of the House and not having enough votes and all this kind of stuff. I haven't seen anything yet about it today to see what's going on in that regard, but we got that. And then we also had the big news this morning about Sidney Powell, the attorney for Trump, who actually has decided to plead guilty and then will be testifying against the other defendants in the case. The 18 defendants there down in Georgia. Right. I think she's going to be, I know I just got off the phone with a friend who reminded me of it though, but it was like, I think she's going to be on probation for 6 years and have to pay $2,700 and a fine. And there's some other things that's going on there as well. And, that's some of the news. I haven't seen what's going on over in Israel this morning yet. It's been pretty darn hectic. For some reason, I get up here and I know I've got to get things going. And I end up watching a little video clip. And I had one downloaded. I want to see if I can pull that up because I do want to watch this. And let me go to download. And that is not it. So where did it go? Downloads. Okay. Well, what I may end up doing then is just taking you over with me and go watch a YouTube show. Y'all up for that? Okay. Because what I'm going to do is watch a thing that I do have permission to share. And it's from Leisha Miller. I know I messed up her name. She's an attorney. I've been talking about the Heritage Foundation. So let me go see if I can pull up some stuff from her. Give me 1 second to do this. And see if I've got the right account up here. And then I'm going to watch, that's Project 2025. We'll go into that in just a minute. It's coming up. Let me go in here with LeejaMiller. Miller. And the Heritage Foundation. So it's a couple of things. I just wanted to kind of go. She does a really good job, and there's no point in me having to reinvent the wheel because, she does a fantastic job on this. And she keeps her shows under like 30, 36 minutes or something like that, in that ballpark. So anyway, the first one I want to go in is just Heritage. And let me go back here. I'm going to start share screen, and hopefully you can hear what's being said here, okay? Because this is important for all of us. This is really important. And I have to give credit to Ms. Miller for her work on this and all the effort that went into making it happen and this design. You can find her over on YouTube, by the way. Share screen. Let me go up here and that one and that one. All right. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing with you because there's another one I want to get to as well, because the other one is more important even than this, but this kind of sets the stage. Okay. So this first one is about the Heritage Foundation. And actually it's, I'm clipping off the end. This talks about the history of the Heritage Foundation and how they got to where they are today and the danger they pose to all the rest of us these days. All right. So let me see, while I'm getting everything all set, I've got to get another screen up here. We'll pull in this one and then, all right. So I'm going to go over here with Agent Miller. And the next one is Project 2025. And I'm not, Okay, so we'll pull that one up there. And then the first thing it is, I want to take this one. This is the one we're sharing at the moment. And I'm going to drag this over. Give me 1 second. There's one over here that I really want to get to the end of it. You can go back and watch this. This is pretty good. This is pretty darn good, folks. You need to watch it to find out what we're up against here. All right. So I'm just going to play the end because this is the most crucial thing that we're going to change the world with. We're going to we can take control of all of this thing, but you have to do what she says to do right here.
Fallen by 25% since the 1990s. But that also is a problem because now these rich conservatives want things that aren't electable. So they have to use other tactics. They have to fearmonger and they have to create something like Project 2025, which is like the mandate for leadership, but on steroids, to concentrate as much power as possible in the hands of the president so that they can get their policies through no matter what the majority of Americans want. Because thanks to the Electoral College, they still have a shot at getting a Republican president in, even if the majority of Americans vote for the Democrat. That's their window, their sliver of opportunity to remove power from agencies, to limit checks and balances so that their president can then push policy that favors the rich. Democracy be damned. The solution to this is that we need to get dark money out of politics. We need reform on who and what can influence our congressional representatives. And we have to get representatives in that believe in regulating themselves. And to do this, you gotta fucking vote. And you have to make sure the Republican does not win the presidency in 2024. I know some of you don't want to be told to vote. I don't really give a fuck. Do it anyway. This is an all hands on deck situation, okay? Liberals don't have the funding to pull off what Heritage is doing or what the State Policy Network is doing at every level of government. It would require a movement of people with enough passion that they'd be willing to do this work for free or very, very cheap. And the conservatives have been cutting liberals off at the knees financially since the 80s, so many would-be activists are burnt out and broke. I don't know what else to tell you. It's bleak, people. Y'all always want me to paint a rosy picture at the end of these videos, but I don't have a solution for you other than voting and organizing around dark money reform. If you got some better idea, leave it in the comments. If you like this video, you might also like my video about Project 2025. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, including my...
Okay, so let me go back up here and just kind of do that again because I'm going to go back up and repeat. This bears repeating. This is how we take this, okay?
We need reform on who and what can influence our congressional representatives. And we have to get representatives in that believe in regulating themselves. And to do this, you gotta fucking vote. And you have to make sure...
You've got to fucking vote. You hear that? We can't let them...
Republican does not win the presidency in 2024. I know some of you don't want to be told to vote. I don't really give a fuck. Do it anyway. This is an all...
Big applause for what she just said and actually how we need to solve this thing, folks, because we need to be freaking voting. That's the only thing. We can't... I mean, they've got the money, they've got the organization, they got the structure, and if we don't vote, they win. It's as simple as that, folks.
All hands on deck situation, okay? Liberals don't have the funding to pull off what Heritage is doing or what the State Policy Network is doing at every level of government. It would require a movement of people with enough passion that they'd be willing to do this work for free or very, very cheap. And the conservatives have been cutting liberals off at the knees financially since the 80s, so many would-be activists are burnt out and broke. I don't know what else to tell you. It's bleak, people. Y'all always want me to paint a rosy picture at the end of these videos, but I don't have a solution for you other than voting and organizing around dark money reform. If you got some better idea, leave it in the comments. If you like this...
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. So let me see. Let me go back over here and stop sharing for a second. I think I may have cut it off anyway. But next thing I want to go through is I want to give you her perspective of what Project 2025 is all about, okay? And I need to change cameras because I'm looking at two different places. I got my one camera on the computer and I got my phone hooked up to this stuff too. So give me 1 second to go into the settings here and change from the computer's camera over to the virtual camera over here on that side like that. And ignore the clothes. I got to get some stuff folded up right over there. But anyway, so that's where we are. Now share. Let's go back to share screen because this is, you need to see this. I'm going to let this one play all the way through. I may stop along the way with different things. I may advance it a little faster in certain places. I don't know, but go on YouTube and find her work. It's you'll see. Yes, you'll see. She's good. Okay. And this is called the Conservative Plan to Take Over the Country. And
that means that it is not illegal.
It's a thing called Article 2. Nobody ever mentions Article 2.
More importantly, Article 2 allows me to do whatever I want.
Our common theme is to take down the administrative state, the bureaucracy, preparing to march into office and bring a new army of aligned, trained, and essentially weaponized conservatives ready to do battle against the deep state.
For the last 18 months, conservatives from every corner of the far-right establishment, from extremist think tanks to former members of the Trump administration to tenured academics, have been working both publicly and privately on a new project. The project's goal: to rescue the country from the grip of the radical left, uniting the conservative movement and the American people against elite rule and woke culture warriors. And the stakes are high. According to this group, if we fail, the fight for the very idea of America may be lost. Last month, this group of far-right leaders, known as Project 2025, released a 920-page manifesto titled Mandate for Leadership: The Conservative Promise. In it, the document's 35 different named authors, united and copyrighted by the Far-Right Heritage Foundation, lay out an explicit, comprehensive plan to completely overhaul the U.S. government from the inside out, with the ultimate goal of furthering far-right wedge issues and concentrating as much power as possible in the hands of the president. Project 2025 is touted as the ultimate solution to paving the way for the next conservative administration, which they believe will take power in January 2025. While the entire project mimics the same talking points that Trump has harped on throughout his presidency and current campaign, the leaders of this project make clear that the plan is not dependent on a specific person winning the Republican nomination and ultimately the White House. Instead, it's a blueprint for the next conservative executive, whoever they may be, to push the limits of presidential power so far that they will answer to no one, wreaking havoc on the delicate balance of our three branches of government that have allowed us to function as a democracy for nearly 2.5 centuries. This is the conservative plan to take over the country. Roll the intro. A lot of you like to assume that lawyers universally are millionaires, and while it's true that there are quite a few millionaire lawyers, many of us are just swimming in cesspools of debt that we had to take on to get these degrees in the first place. So it may come as a shock to learn that I am in fact in so much debt. On top of that law degree, I also have an undergrad degree and a house, and I've started a business, and I've taken on more credit card debt than I care to admit to. And with rising interest rates and cost of living, that's not a strings analysis just for completing the 30-second online debt assessment at pdsdebt.com/analysis. Just for my viewers, go to pdsdebt.com/Miller to complete the quick and easy debt assessment. That's pdsdebt.com/Miller. Thanks, PDS Debt. Launched in April 2022, Project 2025 is the brainchild of the far-right think tank, the Heritage Foundation, which deserves its own entire video for all the shady shit that they've been up to over the last 40+ years. Project 2025 is systematically building the future of the conservative movement and promoting policy objectives that would have devastating consequences not only in our government, but for every person living in this country. That might sound hyperbolic, but I'm telling you, I cover a lot of batshit stories about conservatives, and this one has me spooked as hell, y'all. Their plan to further these goals has 4 pillars. Pillar number 1 is the policy, embodied in that 920-page manifesto they dropped last month. Pillar number 2 is the personnel database. Described as the conservative LinkedIn, the objective of the database is to collect resumes and information for thousands and thousands of conservatives from all walks of life and industries in order to source the best candidates to pack every branch and administrative body in Washington and throughout the states. To ensure that this database of personnel and the chosen warriors who will infiltrate the government at every level are properly prepared to represent the conservative goals set forth in the policy, Project 2025 relies on pillar number 3, training. Through an online institute, Project 2025 will prepare the foot soldiers of the conservative agenda to push their policies from day one. And because they've been preparing for years, they will be ready on day 1 of the new conservative presidency thanks to pillar number 4. Pillar number 4 is the 180-day playbook, the step-by-step guide for the next conservative president to implement the policies laid out in the manifesto as quickly and systematically as possible in the first 180 days of their term. Through these 4 pillars, policy, personnel, training, training and the playbook, Project 2025 aims to overhaul the entire US government from the inside out, putting in place draconian policies and gutting important government agencies, all in the name of the Constitution and good, white, Christian family values. Let's take each pillar in turn, though we will be spending the bulk of our time on Pillar 1, the policy, because we have 920 pages to cover, and it is the most fleshed out and horrific part of the plan so far. Project 2025 published their 920-page Mandate for Leadership Policy Manifesto as a free PDF on their website. I considered getting a physical copy to be able to wave around for you just to see what it looks like printed, but that would require me to give $35 to the Heritage Foundation, so digital will do. That being said, I did not, unfortunately, read 920 pages of this thing, though I don't think it's a bad idea to do so. I did, however, read the first 50 pages of the PDF, including the list of organizers, authors, the introductory note, and the foreword, to get a good flavor of what's going on. And frankly, entire books could be and have been written on some of the batshit theories and doctrines they rely on just in the introduction alone. So we have plenty to dig into. Plus, the work of journalists who have pored over the manifesto at length will help us in our dizzying tour of the policies laid out in this manifesto. So let's get into it. The policy book is divided into 5 sections. 1, taking the reins of government. 2, the common defense. 3, the general welfare. 4, the economy, and 5, independent regulatory agencies. The note at the beginning of the paper, authored by Project 2025 director Paul Dans, a former Trump official, lays out what's at stake. The long march of cultural Marxism through our institutions has come to pass. The federal government is a behemoth, weaponized against American citizens and conservative values, with freedom and liberty under siege as never before. The task at hand to reverse this tide and restore our republic to its original moorings is too great for any one conservative policy shop to spearhead. It requires the collective action of our movement. With the quickening approach of January 2025, we have 2 years and 1 chance to get it right. The language throughout the policy manifesto and the Project 2025 website is militant, clearly meant to play into the fears and the patriotic duty that far-right constituents feel so strongly, the same militant language that led to the righteous anger of the January 6th insurrection. The report starts with, "We want you." The 2025 Presidential Transition Project is the conservative movement's unified effort to be ready for the next conservative administration to govern at 12 noon, January 20th. 2025. Welcome to the mission. By opening this book, you are now a part of it. Indeed, one set of eyes reading these pages will be those of the 47th President of the United States, and we hope every other reader will join in making the incoming administration a success. And I know this, it's not explicitly about Trump, but listen, we all know that man is not reading a 920-page manifesto in the unlikely chance that he does take the White House in January 2025. Get real. But you get the vibe. This is positioned as a mandate, making readers, ostensibly the conservative foot soldiers who'll do their bidding, feel like they're in on a top secret mission, like this is some G.I. Joe mission shit, because the authors know that is the absolute conservative wet dream and they're playing into it. The foreword includes a tidy summation of all the conservative wedge issues and talking points that have been flying around over the last few decades, all of which are addressed at length in the document. Look at America under the ruling and cultural elite today. Inflation is ravaging family budgets, drug overdose deaths continue to escalate, and children suffer the toxic normalization of transgenderism, with drag queens and pornography invading their school libraries. Overseas, a totalitarian communist dictatorship in Beijing is engaged in a strategic, cultural, and economic Cold War against America's interests, values, and people, all while globalist elites in Washington awaken only slowly to that growing threat. Moreover, low-income communities are drowning in addiction and government dependence. Contemporary elites have even repurposed the worst ingredients of 1970s radical chic to build the totalitarian cult known today as the Great Awakening. Most alarming of all, the very moral foundations of our society are in peril. The foreword goes on to list the 4 broad fronts that the policy mandate will cover. Those are 1, restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. 2, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. 3, defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. 4, secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty. And the manifesto goes on to lay out over 920 pages in 5 sections how they plan on furthering those 4 fronts. Chief among the policies promoted in the manifesto are a gutting of the administrative state and furtherance of the unitary executive theory, which we'll get into what those mean, plus anti-globalist and anti-environmentalist policies to protect from infiltration of Chinese culture into American life and continue the flourishing of American commerce, plus draconian anti-LGBTQ+ policies and a centering of religion and the traditional family unit in every aspect of governance. Yeah, it's bleak. Let's get into it. By far the scariest aspect of the policy, and the one getting the most critical commentary, is the absolutist commitment to gutting the administrative state and concentrating power into the hands of the president. The administrative state is sometimes called the 4th branch of government, and there have been debates for centuries as to whether it's constitutional. You know, all those agencies like the EPA, Social Security Agency, HUD, FEMA, the Fed, the Department of Homeland Security? Yeah, all those governmental bodies that manage the administration of day-to-day operations of the country and promulgate regulations for everything from transportation to healthcare to food to clean water. That's the administrative state. It's not technically in the Constitution, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not constitutional. And listen, most law students take an admin law class, and I can tell you right now that shit is dry. I barely could keep my eyes open during that class, so I won't bore you with too much detail, but this issue does take on a new and much more important meaning when you learn what Project 2025 wants to do about it. So here's some Admin Law 101. Admin law governs the structure, decision processes, and behavior of administrative agencies. Those agencies are created by statute, executive order, or by state constitutions. Admin agencies are also referred to as commissions, boards, authorities, bureaus, offices, departments, divisions, etc. They're created by executive order, meaning when the president says so, or by Congress. Say Congress passes a law saying something is illegal. In that same law, they might say, we also create this new agency, and this agency is tasked with overseeing and implementing this law. For example, the Federal Food and Drug Administration was created by the Pure Food and Drugs Act of 1906 to oversee the implementation of that law. The main functions of administrative agencies are to investigate, make rules, and adjudicate. That's why there's administrative law courts. They're not state or federal courts, they're separate, less formal courts where agencies can conduct hearings and enforce the regulations that they write and promote. Those admin law rulings can be appealed up to state and federal courts, but most of the day-to-day workings of administrative agencies happen within the agencies and their courts. That doesn't mean, however, that there is zero oversight of these agencies. Like I said, rulings in the admin law courts can be appealed to state and federal courts. Congress can pass laws like the Administrative Procedure Act to rein in administrative agencies, and Congress also still controls the purse strings. The first federal admin agency was the State Department, created in 1789 when Congress was still chock-a-block full of original framers of the Constitution, I might add, which does back up claims that the administrative bodies are implied in the Constitution. The idea behind creating these agencies, instead of having Congress or the president alone in charge of implementing the laws, because it turns out it takes a lot of work to run a country, and agencies are in charge of creating a lot of regulations. Further, agencies are staffed by subject matter experts, at least in theory. So, for example, the people in the EPA have spent their careers learning about environmental policy and regulation, and are therefore much better positioned to implement a law than the lone president or congresspeople. And the Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld the constitutionality of administrative agencies and tends to give a lot of deference to their decisions because they are the subject matter experts. While Congress often creates the agencies, most of them technically fall under the purview of the executive branch, of which the president is the head, because the Constitution vests the power to faithfully execute the laws of the country in the president in Article 2. Admin agencies do just that. They execute the laws, and they oversee said execution in a way that a single executive couldn't, and also in a way that ensures extensive checks and balances over executive authority. But this is why the president typically appoints heads of all these agencies, because they're technically part of the executive branch. But while the heads of those agencies come and go with the politics of the time, the people operating under them are not tied to politics or a president and tend to make careers out of working in those agencies. agencies. This again creates a modicum of separations of powers and ensures that people with subject matter expertise are staffing these agencies. So sure, you can appoint the Attorney General as president, but you can't fire all the prosecutors who don't agree with you. I was working at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston the day that Jeff Sessions was fired, and the jubilation some of those lawyers felt, it was palpable. And they don't have to worry about losing their job because of that. Or at least not for now. Okay, so this is why administrative law is considered the fourth branch of government. It wields a lot of power. Some would say too much power, which is why Project 2025 is so dead set on gutting administrative bodies. Are we on the same page? Great. You are now more of an expert on admin law than 99% of the US population. The foreword in Project 2025's policy manifesto lays out their objections to the current state of affairs. Congress passes intentionally vague laws that delegate decision-making over a given issue to a federal agency. That agency's bureaucrats, not just unelected but seemingly unfireable, then leap at the chance to fill the vacuum created by Congress's preening cowardice. The federal government is growing larger and less constitutionally accountable, even to the president, every year. Okay, so they're saying there's too many bureaucrats and the president doesn't have enough power. It continues. The conservative promise lays out how to fire supposedly unfireable federal bureaucrats, how to shutter wasteful and corrupt bureaus and offices, how to muzzle woke propaganda at every level of government, how to restore the American people's constitutional authority over the administrative state, and how to save untold taxpayer dollars in the process. So they're basically Ron Swansoning the government, attempting to put people in places of power to dismantle federal agencies from the inside. Except it's not a fun joke about a lovable libertarian with a mustache. It has far-reaching consequences that are made all the more dire when you learn about the unitary executive theory, the theory upon which many of the Project 2025 recommendations rely. Okay, we got admin law, unitary executive theory. We are getting into some deep constitutional law principles today, my friends. And if you want even more of a primer on constitutional law, check out my free 2-week email course called Smartass Civics. Sign up to receive daily bite-sized morsels of con law delivered straight to your inbox. You'll be beating your racist Uncle Rick at arguments by Thanksgiving. Link in the description. Okay, so unitary executive theory. It's this batshit theory that has only been made up in the last few decades. In fact, we have our good old friend Ronald fucking Reagan to blame once again for its proliferation, because of course. The theory came to prominence during Reagan, but really put down roots during the presidency of George W. Bush. Basically, the theory rejects the idea of 3 equal branches of government put in place to ensure a rigorous system of checks and balances so no one branch becomes too powerful. Instead, the unitary executive theory says actually, inherent in Article 2 of the Constitution, the president has complete control of the executive branch. So Congress can't create all of these agencies and put power in the hands of agency heads to make decisions. That power is supposed to be concentrated in the hands of the one singular executive. Reagan's lawyers came up with the idea in order to push deregulatory efforts. Bush Jr. used it to lend validity to his exercises of power after 9/11. While Obama expressed a more modest view of presidential power initially, he too exercised authority that circumvented Congress in several policy areas, especially in the deployment of US military forces overseas. And then Trump, of course, came in and was like, hold my Big Mac. Let me try this. And he frequently tested the bounds of acceptable exercise of executive power. From Muslim bans to the border to threatening sanctuary cities, he declared over and over that his authority extended to overriding congressional laws and funding authority. As one judge stated in response to Trump's threats against sanctuary cities, the separation of powers acts as a check on tyranny and the concentration of power. If the executive branch can determine policy and then use the power of the purse to mandate compliance with that policy by the state and local governments, all without authorization or even acquiescence of elected legislators, that check against tyranny is forsaken. Trump considered himself and his presidential powers not only beyond the bounds of Congress, but even beyond the bounds of judicial review, arguing that his travel ban was unreviewable by the federal courts. The judge in that case declared there is no precedent to support this claimed unreviewability, which runs contrary to the fundamental structure of our constitutional democracy. Even scholars who are in favor of wide-reaching executive power are appalled at Trump's behavior. John Yoo advocates in favor of the unitary executive theory and famously wrote a memo defending the legality of waterboarding under Bush. But he also wrote a New York Times editorial entitled "Executive Power Run Amok," saying, "Even I have grave concerns about Mr. Trump's uses of presidential power." Yikes. But it appears that Project 2025 is supporting the idea that the president should constitutionally be entitled to vast levels of control over all administrative agencies, what they do, and who runs and staffs them from the top down, and Congress should have no ability to check that executive authority. Many constitutional law scholars argue that this is beyond the bounds of the Constitution, no matter how you look at it. But the first administration of Donald Trump, whether or not there's a second, has already done the damage. As Jeffrey Crouch writes in his 2020 book on the unitary executive theory, yes, there are entire books about this, once precedents have been established for presidents to exercise expansive presidential powers with little pushback, future chief executives will be less likely to feel responsible for dialing them back. And Project 2025 is betting on just that, with its expansive overhaul of every administrative agency in the country. If he does get back in the White House, Trump has made clear that he'll finish what he started, declaring he will find and remove the radicals who have infiltrated the Federal Department of Education, and promising to demolish the deep state.
We will expel the warmongers from our government. We will drive out the globalists. We will cast out the communists, Marxists, and fascists. And we will throw off the sick political class that hates our country.
He plans to do this in part through what's been called Schedule F, a plan that Project 2025 appears to adopt as well. In the waning days of Trump's presidency, he passed an executive order called Creating Schedule F in the Accepted Service. This order removed employment protections from career officials, those who work in government agencies in a non-political, non-appointed position, deeming them Schedule F employees who may be fired at will by the president, presumably if they don't show sufficient loyalty or execute the duties of the agency in the way the president deems necessary, effectively stripping any sort of checks or balances on the president's ability to control federal agencies from the top down. In fact, two former Trump White House aides, Johnny McEntee and Russell Vought, who were instrumental to Schedule F, are also involved in Project 2025, indicating a continuation of the policy by whatever conservative president next takes the White House. McEntee is quoted as saying, "Our current executive branch was conceived of by liberals for the purpose of promulgating liberal policies. There is no way to make the existing structure function in a conservative manner. It's not enough to get the personnel right. What's necessary is a complete system overhaul." And that is at the heart of Project 2025's plan. None of their policies and wedge issues work without gutting the administrative state and concentrating more power in the hands of the president. Of course, their goal is also to pack Congress and the courts with as many conservatives as possible, but that's less of a problem when you establish an executive with unchecked power. And through that unchecked power, the new conservative executive will be able to gut agencies and put people in place to further conservative agendas. Those include a push away from environmental protections in favor of becoming a fossil fuels industry leader, a move away from what they call globalism, including encouraging corporations to bring jobs back from overseas. And the foreword to the manifesto declares, "Those who run our so-called American corporations have bent to the will of the woke agenda and care more for their foreign investors and organizations than their American workers and customers." Today, nearly every top-tier U.S. university president or Wall Street hedge fund manager has more in common with a socialist European head of state than with the parents at a high school football game in Waco, Texas. Many elites' entire identity, it seems, is wrapped up in their sense of superiority over those people. But under our Constitution, they are the mere equals of the workers who shower after work instead of before. And while that passage is absolutely unhinged for many reasons, there are a few things we can agree on here. American corporations absolutely do care more for their foreign investors and organizations than their American workers and customers. And yeah, they hide behind woke language like DEI while also being awful for workers, the environment, and equality writ large. But I think conservatives genuinely think that corporations actually believe the DEI bullshit they spew, and that it's not just a way to avoid lawsuits. Like, come on, guys, I thought you were a little smarter than that. Also, I would wager a bet that the framers of our Constitution, largely products of the Academy, did not consider themselves equal to laborers who showered after work. The policy also shows an outsized obsession with China, another popular conservative talking point, saying that China is a totalitarian enemy of the United States, not a strategic partner or fair competitor, and that America's elites have betrayed the American people. The solution to all of the above problems is not to tinker with this or that government program to replace this or that bureaucrat. These are problems not of technocratic efficiency, but of national sovereignty and constitutional governance. We solve them not by trimming and reshaping the leaves, but by ripping out the trees trees, root and branch. The report goes on to say illegal immigration should be ended, not mitigated. The border sealed, not reprioritized. Economic engagement with China should be ended, not rethought. Our manufacturing and industrial base should be restored, not allowed to deteriorate further. Confucius Institutes, TikTok, and any other arm of Chinese propaganda and espionage should be outlawed, not merely monitored. Another area of grave concern for Project 2025 is the proliferation of LGBTQ ideas and transgenderism, suggesting draconian measures that many critics are saying would effectively criminalize LGBTQ expression. As the foreword to the manifesto says, the next conservative president must make the institutions of American civil society hard targets for woke culture warriors. This starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other term used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract, grant, regulation, and piece of legislation that exists. It goes on to say, pornography manifested today in the omnipresent propagation of transgender ideology and sexualization of children has no claim to First Amendment protection. Its purveyors are child predators and misogynistic exploiters of women. Their product is as addictive as any illicit drug and as psychologically destructive as any crime. Pornography should be outlawed. The people who produce and distribute it should be imprisoned. Educators and public librarians who purvey it should be classed as registered sex offenders. And telecommunications and technology firms that facilitate its spread should be shuttered. As far as I can tell, to them, pornography includes any discussion of being transgender or really discussion of sexual and gender identity, period, based on their reference to educators and public librarians who've been under attack for allowing children to check out such psychologically destructive books as And Tango Makes Three, a book about gay penguins, and Sparkle Boy, a book about a little kid who wears a tutu. But the rape and murder in the Bible is fine and definitely requires zero therapy later in life. A later chapter in the manifesto on the Department of Health and Human Services advocates that the president should direct agencies to rescind regulations interpreting sex discrimination provisions as prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, transgender status, sex characteristics, etc. This would strip protections for LGBTQ folks, as well as women, it seems, given that gender identity is listed, effectively making current regulations around sex discrimination fully obsolete. The chapter further states that the next president should require agencies to maintain a biblically based social science reinforced definition of marriage and family, meaning the next president should push to remove protections for same-sex marriage. And that's not the only reference to the Bible or the sanctity of the family in the policy document. Its 920 pages are littered with references to the Bible and Christianity and the traditional family unit. The foreword declares the most important community in each of our lives and the life of the nation is the family. Today, the American family is in crisis. 40% of all children are born to unmarried mothers, including more than 70% of Black children. There is no government program that can replace the hole in a child's soul cut out by the absence of a father. Which, first of all, that's some old school Republican language. The loud welfare queen wolf whistle of Reagan rings on into the night, I see. But also, frankly, as someone without a dad, I can confirm that actually the health insurance I had through the state as a poor recently graduated 22-year-old paid for the therapy that I needed to fill that hole. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. But that's not the point. The point is to demonize single mothers, especially Black ones, and place the blame of all of society's woes on the backs of individuals who just need to work harder to maintain their traditional family units, and not on the system that leads to impoverished single mothers in the first place, like, I don't know, the mass incarceration of Black fathers, for example. One of the main stated goals of the policy is securing our God-given individual rights to live freely against the woke agenda. The opening note of the manifesto states, "Today the left is threatening the tax-exempt status of churches and charities that reject woke progressivism. They will soon turn to Christian schools and clubs with the same totalitarian intent." In the chapter on COVID-19 policies, the author asks, how much risk mitigation is worth the price of shutting down churches on the holiest day of the Christian calendar and far beyond, as happened in 2020? What is the proper balance of lives saved versus souls saved? And the fact that these people think that the federal government should be concerned with saving souls tells you enough about the belief system of the people who want to overrun our government. The chapter on the U.S. Department of Labor states, God ordained the Sabbath as a day of rest, and until very recently, the Judeo-Christian tradition sought to honor that mandate by moral and legal regulation of work on that day, and blames consumerism and secularism for the decline in Sabbath observance, calling on Congress to encourage communal rest by amending the Fair Labor Standards Act to require that workers be paid time and a half for hours worked on the Sabbath, which sounds kind of nice except for the whole Christian nationalism thing. The chapter on the U.S. Department of State says that special attention must be paid to challenges of religious freedom, especially the status of Middle Eastern Christians and other religious minorities, as well as the human trafficking endemic to the region. But of course, we know which religious freedom they're concerned with here. In all of this, Project 2025 essentially creates a blueprint for the proliferation of a Christian nationalist agenda at every level of government. You guys, that's just one pillar of Project 2025. This 920-page manifesto is pillar number 1. But it is the most extensive because it lays out the foundation for everything to come and how the next president should go about pushing every conservative talking point imaginable, all with the backdrop of eviscerating federal agencies and concentrating as much power as possible in the hands of the president. Pillar number 2 is the creation of a personnel database, what they're calling the conservative LinkedIn, which sounds like hell on earth, from which to pull qualified conservatives to place at every level of government. They have an application to be part of the personnel database linked on their website. So I thought, hell, maybe I'll apply. Y'all are always telling me that I should get involved in government. They even had boxes I could check saying that I'm liberal and progressive, so it seems like maybe I'm welcome too. I just answered a few questions, and they were all interestingly worded as though they were trying to woke bait me, like the gender wage gap is the result of prejudice and discrimination, agree or disagree, or the US needs nationalized healthcare, agree or disagree. I answered honestly, attached my resume, and submitted. A few minutes later, I received a confirmation email that my application had been received. We'll see what happens next. Seems like a good way to keep abreast of developments. Seems like definitely something that could easily, I don't know, be overrun with liberal and progressive applications. It would really be too bad if like every person who watched this video submitted an application to be added to the database. Seems like it would make the...
Let me back up right there for just a second.
Trying to woke bait me, like the gender wage gap is the result of prejudice and discrimination, agree or disagree, or the US needs nationalized healthcare, agree or disagree. Later, I received a confirmation email that my application had been received. We'll see what happens next. Seems like a good way to keep abreast of developments. Seems like definitely something that could easily, I don't know, be overrun with liberal and progressive applications. It would really be too bad if like every person who watched this video submitted an application to be added to the database. Seems like it would make their job a lot harder to find the good conservative candidates in all those applications. I mean, that's just like something I was thinking about. I'm just spitballing here, okay? I left the link to the application in the description just so that you can do your own independent research and form your own opinions. The third pillar of Project 2025 is training. According to the Project 2025 website, the Presidential Administration Academy covers topics ranging from how to identify appointee positions for which you qualify, to navigating the necessary background and security clearance processes, to recognizing and addressing the dangers of the administrative state. Potential appointees will learn the intricacies of the federal budget process, how to work with the media, managing congressional and stakeholder relations, the federal procurement process, and dozens of other topics that provide the knowledge and skills you'll need to be an effective presidential appointee. Current certificate programs offered are called Prepared to Serve, Conservative Governance 101, and Conservative Governance Advancing Policy, with more on the way. It appears that the application to take those courses is the same one to be added to the personnel database. So if you, for some reason, decided to, I don't know, submit an application and overwhelm their personnel database, maybe you would also be given access to these courses. I'm not sure. Definitely do your own research. The final pillar, pillar number 4, is the 180-day playbook. This appears to be yet to be written, but according to the website, the playbook would include a comprehensive, concrete transition plan for every single federal agency to implement in the first 180 days. This mirrors the plan that the Heritage Foundation gave to Reagan when he entered office, allowing him to hand off vetted conservative policy initiatives to each agency without having to do much work on his own. The Heritage Foundation, which is the creator of Project 2025, is seeking to redo what they did with Reagan, but put it on steroids. That 920-page manifesto is a good indication of the types of recommendations that they'll give to each agency. Okay, so I hope that I have sufficiently communicated the gravity of this plan. If a Republican wins the presidency in 2024, they will be handed this plan. They, of course, aren't required to do anything with it, in theory, but given that Trump and DeSantis, the two frontrunners for the nomination, are both batshit fucking off their damn rockers, it seems likely that whoever wins the nomination would wholeheartedly back most, if not all, of the policy items put forth by Project 2025. Lord knows Trump isn't going to read any of this, so he'll likely just hand it off, as is, to be implemented by people who can read good and stuff. So what do? We make extra damn fucking sure that the Republican doesn't win the election in 2024. This is an all hands on deck situation, my friends. Do I want Biden? No, but he is once again the best choice that we have. You also need to vote in Democratic senators and representatives as well. You need to bring your roommates and your partners and your family members and make sure that they vote. You need to call them ahead of time and be like, hi, what's your plan for voting? You need to be thinking about this early and often. You need to be just a little bit scared. Not to be fearmongery, but this is genuinely a terrifying prospect for our government that feels really, really imminent. Of course, any of these unilateral actions that a Republican president could theoretically take could then also be challenged in courts, but he's packed the courts, including the Supreme Court, and the result of attempting to implement all of these new policies in the first 180 days would be sheer chaos. John F. Kelly, Trump's literal chief of staff, has said it would be chaotic. It just simply would be chaotic because he'd continually be trying to exceed his authority, but the sycophants would go along with it. It would be a non-stop gunfight with the Congress and the courts. Even if the theoretical Republican president couldn't get through all of these policy proposals, it would still create a level of chaos that could further undermine trust in the government as a whole. The good news, if you could call it that, is that Project 2025 is radical. It does not comport with how the majority of Americans feel. 71% of Americans support same-sex marriage. 85% of Americans believe abortion should be legal under at least certain circumstances, and only 13% say it should be illegal under all circumstances. 69% of Americans believe that the US should take steps to become carbon neutral by 2050. The number of adults in the US who identify as Christian has fallen by 25% since the 1990s. For most people, Democrats, centrists, and even some Republicans, Project 2025 goes way too far and represents an upheaval and existential threat that is beyond what most people want to see in the US government. So my hope is that the more people who know the actual contents of the Project 2025 plan, the more people will get out and vote to make sure the hellscape it presents never comes to fruition. Sharing this video with your networks is a great place to start. If you liked this video, you might also like my video about why conservatives are obsessed with election fraud. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, including my newest patrons.
Wow. It's always good to watch. So the biggest takeaway from that, go vote. Vote. Take your friends, your family, everybody with you. And then spread the word. Share this video that she put together. Share it. Share it with all your friends. Go out there and absolutely make sure that people can hear and see what is going on. And if you want to learn more about the Heritage Foundation itself, she actually has a pretty good primer on the history of it and where it's going and how it got to where it is today and the difficulty we face trying to take it down. And even the analogy of a David versus a Goliath thing, that's probably not accurate. You've got a Goliath standing up to Ant-Man without all the superpowers. So that's what we end up with. So we've got to go vote, folks. Get your people out there to vote. You want to stop it. This thing is radical and it's extremely dangerous. So let me get back over to where you are. So I have one person viewing over there. Thank you so much. I have no comments to discuss at this point in time. However, if you do want to say anything, just say hi. Let me know where you are. And I do appreciate everyone. Let me see where people are actually watching from. Oh, hi, Coda. So anyway, tonight we do have a general membership meeting. I'll send out some link information on a broad email blast later today for everyone. Make sure you check your emails, check your junk mail too. Check over there in spam, because a lot of times what happens with some of the emails that we send out, that I send out from here, they'll end up in your junk folder. And I've heard from several people saying that they've been unable, they aren't staying in communication. They can't see what's going on. There's lack of communication, stuff like that. Well, look in your junk folders. and then if you have access to any of our email address systems, go in there too and make sure that you actually have opened it up, set it up and made it operational and all that kind of stuff. So it's very important that you do that. That way you can stay on top of what we're doing. I've also put together a text messaging system right now. It's just the executive leaders are on that. So the third week of every month has 3 big things that happen during that week. I guess it's the third Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern. The action group has a monthly meeting. On the third Wednesday of every month, the executive leadership team has a meeting. On the third Thursday of every month, the general membership meeting is held also at 8 p.m. Eastern. So there's opportunities during those 3, the third Monday, the third Wednesday, the third Thursday of each month to find out what's going on. So, and, to be up to date on stuff. And, make sure you're checking your emails, because that's the biggest and best way we can communicate. This show that I put out right here, right now, that's live to everyone, it goes to Facebook, it goes to LinkedIn and Twitch and Twitter, and also to YouTube. So you can find us all kinds of ways, and you can keep up to date about what we're doing. Now, one of the things that we will do on our Wednesday night meetings are the third Wednesday of every month during the executive leaders meeting. There may be times when we would need to have closed door sessions, particularly around any kind of personnel issues or something that needs to be, that we may not want the broad general public out there to know that we're strategizing on something, because we have to, their enemies are everywhere around you, and you have to be really careful of these people, because they'll just take everything you darn say and then either ignore you or stomp you down. So a lot of that's going on. Anyway, that's what happens. That's what planned to be happening on those Wednesday night meetings, the third Wednesday of every month. And that's like I said, our general, and that's our executive leaders meeting. So mark your calendars for those things. Many of you should have received an invitation to attend. The way they will all work is that it will work through our Microsoft Teams account, so that everybody can get on and be on the stage and all that kind of stuff if they want. But the only way I can actually live stream to multiple platforms is to go through StreamYard. So there'll be some people on the StreamYard platform, but I'll share the screen from the Teams meeting so that you can actually have everybody out there. All of these things are public. So if you come into them, be aware that these are public events. Third Monday for the action group, it's public and open. I want people to communicate, be able to see what's happening, nothing hidden behind closed doors. You know exactly what is going on. And then on Wednesday night for the executive leadership meeting, the same thing is true, except for those cases where we have to go behind closed doors. But all these things are public and broadcast publicly, because that's one of the biggest failings that I've noticed over time, is that there's a lack of transparency. And I want everybody to know as much as possible, about what's going on. This is members organization, right? And the same thing with Thursday night, whenever you have your general membership meeting, that also is public. So make sure that when you're in these public meetings, I shouldn't have to say this kind of thing, but some people do misbehave. I do have control of the microphone. I will have control of all the microphones and the cameras, so that I can go click, 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 click if something really crazy is going on. As a matter of fact, I also invite other people into these public viewings on all those other sites: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, and all that, and on the website. I mean, you're going to have people in the audience who don't necessarily agree with us or our right to exist, and that's fine, folks. That's fine. I have no objections to that, because one of the very first things we have to do is get past this idea that we want to shut the door on people who don't like us. And we have to figure out a way to be able to communicate with them. Yeah, you don't want to have to open up. You don't want to open up to anti-Semitism or bias and bigotry that is just vile, or attacking another person. We want respect and dignity. So there's some controls over it. Obviously, there has to be. However, if you shut out other people, then how will they ever know? I mean, if you're going in your own echo chamber and you're just shouting and doing all kinds of entertainment and all that, and you're in your own echo chamber, where you're only going to have an impact on the echo chamber. If you want to change the world, you have to be willing to put yourself out there and be strong enough to handle it. Because a lot of times, I mean, we're all in a learning process. We're all in that place where we need to figure out what we can and can't do, and how much we want to do it, and how much we want to put ourselves out there to do it. Because it can be a challenge, and you have to be able to you have to know how to take care of yourself, or have sufficient support around you to take care of yourself. Because I don't want anyone to get in the place where it gets to be so overwhelming that we just shut down. We can't do that. We can't have that. And I know how powerful this stuff can be. And I was writing a note to one of my friends just the other day about staring into this Project 2025 stuff. I mean, when you stare into that abyss, that dark abyss that is Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation, well, it also stares back at you. So you have to be really careful about that, because otherwise you can fall down and you can look into this thing and turn out to be just as dark, because you've allowed your soul and your spirit to become darkened by that filth that's there. And that's what happens. You don't want to spend your time and thoughts so deeply involved in the abyss of all those wrong things that they're talking about, that your attitude, your expression, your joy is taken away from you for that. So make sure you have a lifeline to save yourself and to get pulled out of that. Spouse, friends, family, whatever. If they start noticing that you've fallen into that abyss, it's you've got to let them know, hey, look, I'm going into a dark place here. Really. So you've got to be that strong, and it takes a lot. And as I said, not everyone is there to be able to handle that kind of stuff. But if you are there, and if you're willing to jump in, well, to give you a little idea, and some people I've told this story to in the past, but when I first went public with everything, I was involved with 3 restaurants, and out in western Missouri, near Whiteman Air Force Base. And let me see. So I'd gone public, and one day I get a call that says, hey, look, we need some veggies. The truck didn't bring us stuff. It's what we needed. So I said, I'm short hair. I had no idea. The stereotypical stuff that is for me, for my identification, my self-identification. And I didn't know how to do the makeup. I didn't know anything about I didn't have the hair. I surely didn't know about fashion or anything, because all I could wear at that point in time were like mini skirts. And my kids were saying, yeah, you don't want to go out in that one. I'm thinking, oh my God, when's the last time I heard something like that? Oh, I think I told them that once. So anyway, I had to go to the grocery store. I had to go to Walmart, actually, to get some veggies. And instead of going to the closest door to the grocery side of the store and parking as close as I could to that door, no, I knew that if I did that, if I started this whole process out hiding, even while I was in public, or letting that kind of anxiety win in my life, that I would always be fighting it. So, like any good military person, right? Decided to confront it head on. There's trepidation. I was just like, that kind of stuff. It was tough. It really was tough. And all those butterflies, I'd always been told that when you get those butterflies of anxiety popping up in your stomach or whatever, actually it was something I learned in the military, I think. But anyway, so it was like, you're going to have the anxiety. You're going to have the butterflies down there. But at some point you have to realize, just tell them to march in formation. Oh my God, come on. If you're going to be down there, get in line, line up and keep your eyes ahead and march. So I parked as far away from the front door as possible in the very last parking space at the end of the parking lot, away. And I grabbed the steering wheel with both hands and I go, Maureen, or I said, let's see, open the door, Maureen, and march. So I did. I opened the door, got out of my car, held my head up, and I just walked calmly and slowly. Well, it's kind of butterflies, but still, I have to do it. I walked straight into Walmart, into the furthest door from the grocery section, and then went up and down every single aisle, looking people in the eyes. It went past one family that said, there's one mother said to her 4 kids, she said, "Don't go near people like that." And I'm going, "Hi." And I just smiled at her and just said, "Well, come on. Yeah, right. Really?" But anyway, so I marched up and down every aisle, got the grocery, looked back. Every time I've been in a place where you could be challenged by stuff like that, or where it might be a challenge, or say, for instance, all the people who were having breakfast at my restaurant, so they were having breakfast there, but they all switched over to, I don't know, Hardee's or something like that. They had breakfast early in the morning after I went public until they stopped coming and visiting my restaurants. But so I made a point of actually going to Hardee's or wherever they were at for their early breakfast in the morning, all the older people there, I'd make a point of just sitting down either in the middle of them at the empty seat, or in a position so that I could just look at them and smile and say hi. If you do that enough, it gets really easy to do this. But you have to train yourself, but you also have to know your limits. And every one of us have limits. I'm still trying to find a lot of mine. But at 64, I'm still trying to figure out what those limits are. There's very little that actually frightens me. You get the anxiety spot and all this stuff that happens, but shoot, come on. You know how to do, what to do with anxiety. You force it to fly in formation, right? Anyway, with that, I've now been at this for 1 hour. You did get to watch some, a big shout out to Lisa Miller for the program that she did on Project 2025, and also the historical one that she did with with the Heritage Foundation, which is the author of Project 2025. You can go look it up. And let me put her name over here because I want to just do that. I'll create a little banner in recognition of what she did. This is her name, how you spell it. You need to check out this work, okay? She's really good. Let me see if I can find up here, if I can get her YouTube channel up again. And this one is about, I'm going to put the link over there for the one she did on Project 2025. Rather than us all beating to death the same topics and not being coordinated in all this, we need to be more like the Heritage Foundation and actually get together and do something. Right now, we're just a bunch of chaotic little piss ants trying to take on this Goliath. But if we don't, we won't. Piss ant won't even be the size we're left with. That will be gone because this is the link for that video. Well, I guess a link's probably not a good idea because you can't really see it anyway. You can't do anything with it. Ta-da! And I'm not Lisa Miller, okay? Just so everybody knows, I am not that person, but go there. Find her on YouTube. Find this lawyer. She's an attorney. Go find her work on YouTube, and then let me do it like this. I want to edit that really quickly before we get out of here. Attorney. Let's see. YouTube. I'm putting it in here. I don't put it up on this top here. YouTube about Heritage and Project 2025. She's done some really amazing work with this stuff, folks. Really amazing stuff, and she's spot on. So far, what I've seen on those two projects where she was putting out the little video clip about 30-minute long on the history of the Heritage Foundation and then 36 minutes on their Project 2025, she's spot on with a lot of this. I have reached out to her. I'm hoping I can hear back from them so that we can actually do something collaboratively, particularly from our veterans perspective or in the military perspective, but all Americans in general, really, because this impacts everyone. We've got to find a way to get together and move this as one coordinated effort to take this down. If we don't, they win. Let's see, save that. And there. Okay, you can see it. Lisa Miller, attorney. You can find her on YouTube and look up the ones that have to do with heritage. It's pretty near the top, probably somewhere if you're on YouTube to find it. But anyway, that's what we were looking at earlier. That's what we watched. And I'm likely to pull up more stuff from her because I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel, but I just want to make it as clear as possible. Those presentations that were live from YouTube are from her. Okay. All right. With that, let me go over here and what are we doing? Oh, there's our website. Well, that's not our website. Where'd it go? That. No. Oh, it's at the, oh, I know what I'm doing now. Hold on a second. I got to get rid of these things, hide that one, and back to that. And then we're going to scroll across the bottom again. Our disclaimer down here, by the way, if you're under 20 or if you're under 18 years of age, you have no business being on this show. None whatsoever. None. So don't even bother coming back if you're under 18. All right, everybody. Have a great day. And with that, see ya. I'll end the